Counter-Strike has time and time again been a reminder of how a game can be easy and complex at the same time. Ever since its origins within the first Half-Life game, the easy to get into but hard to master approach to its gameplay has made it something that has hooked a lot of people into the experience. Part of what also made Counter-Strike refreshing was its modern setting, something that you didn't always see back in the 90s when sci-fi or fantasy would take the reins in the FPS genre. The game was also an antithesis to what Quake and Unreal Tournament were doing in the background. Instead of the fast-paced but small arenas with the high time to kill, you had an emphasis on slower but more tactical gameplay where kills would be much faster due to the lower time to kill, with two teams, different loadouts and objectives. More people would pick it up, and people are still picking up Counter-Strike 20 plus years later through different editions, from the mod itself all the way up to Counter-Strike 2. It's a game for competitors, for casuals, and for those that want to have fun. It's got something for everyone, people that want to rank up in competitive, play DM matches all day in frag, surf or KZ, zombies, and much more to boot. You can even find communities that still play 1.6 in Source, and honestly, they both still hold up pretty well in terms of gameplay and modding content. Counter-Strike has everything, and to top it off too, it even has it all in 2D. Counter-Strike 2D is the result of someone who at the time wanted to make an easier to run version of a game that was fairly demanding at the time. Keep in mind that not everyone was into PC gaming like they are nowadays. The community was smaller in comparison, and other people preferred the convenience of consoles where you could literally pop the disc in and play straight away. In any event, Peter Schaus, the sole creator behind Unreal Software, wanted to make a game he wanted to play but in 2D due to hardware limitations. CS2D takes the blueprint of 1.6 and squishes it into 2D, with far less intensive hardware requirements, which was a huge advantage that 2D games had back in the day. I never really played the game much back then or at all. In fact, my earliest experience with Counter-Strike was actually on the original Xbox port, and then eventually 1.6 on the computer. It didn't run super well on our home Dell computer, but you would get used to what you could afford at the time. One thing is for certain though, CS2D would have ran like a dream on that computer. And that was the main motivation behind the project, accessibility. The game early on would be written in Blitz Basic, a dialect language that would then be used for 2D game development, but would also get replaced by Blitz 3D, which was a more capable version of Blitz and would enable more features to enhance the gameplay of CS2D. The game would become successful enough that the developer would then transition the game into Blitz Max, which would enable even more features to the game, a successor to Blitz 3D, and it's a game that's been updated over the years. Like I said, I don't have a lot of history with the game. Its presence, however, does return that nostalgic period where in the 2000s, you would find these free open source games or freeware games online, and I don't mean free to play, but I mean genuinely free. Stuff like Soldat, Alien Arena, Nexus, the Cube games, or even the gargantuan pile of Flash games that you could play even on school computers. It's hard to find a lot of these games nowadays because of how much an effect the free-to-play model has had on the idea of free games. You can of course still find older free games or Flash games through emulators, as well as a bunch of free games on Steam. But as for older games in the 2000s, it's a lot more difficult nowadays to find them. Thankfully though, CS2D isn't that hard to find because it can either be downloaded directly from the website or from the Steam page. I'll put both links for where you can acquire the game in the description. So with CS2D, you would expect to have the same experience but in 2D format. Well, technically yes, you do. You have a lot of the same maps, all of the weapons from 1.6, including some bonus ones that you can also play on specific maps or servers. The riot shield and the useless night vision goggles in a game where you can see everything anyways, in CS2D. Both teams and even the sound effects come into the fold as well. And no, it's not an official Valve project either, but a very faithful 2D adaptation made by one person using the Blitz language. One of the best aspects of this game is again how incredibly easy it is to run. The hardware spec and disk space requirements are very generous in this game, more so than 1.6 itself. Even if you had the lowest spec PC in the market, you could still play CS2D with relative ease and even load it with mods, which has been a huge component of CS since all the way back to the beginning, at least until CSGO and 2 where modding became a little bit more complicated. Also, the game is very old, and yet I've had no issues at all running the game. Running old games, even on modern systems, can sometimes be a struggle because of operating system compatibility and not necessarily because of hardware. But again, CS2D over the years has gotten updates, and the developer has ensured that you can run the game even on modern operating systems and tap heads in 2D. Speaking of tapping heads and shooting, it is fundamentally different than in any other CS game here. For starters, the 2D perspective changes your viewpoint where you can see large portions of the maps you play on. Also, the 2D layout makes every area on the same layer, so elevated areas are no longer a thing in CS2D. Like for instance, the catwalk to Extended A in Dust 2 is normally in an elevated position, but in CS2D it's on the exact same layer. It's a bit weird to adjust to this at first, but the one thing to take into account is that again, everything is on the same layer, so everything is flat. And the only thing you have to worry about is the visibility of the target. The camera is in a top-down view, and the crosshair is your point of reference for where your character is aiming at. You can run with the knife, walk to a crawl and peek, play as if you're playing Counter-Strike. You can also change certain gameplay mechanics in the settings, such as adding recoil, friendly fire, off-screen damage, which just means that you can hit targets from far away, off the screen, and much more through scripting using Lua. However, not everything from CS translates well into this game. For starters, you can't really do grenade lineups like you can in the other Counter-Strike games because of the 2D perspective. This means that most areas with walls will just cancel the distance of your throw. So, which means that if you throw directly at the wall in CS2D, it will just simply collide with the wall. It's not like in other CS games where you can just throw above it. In CS2D, if it's right in front of you, it's not going anywhere else. To throw grenades effectively in CS2D, you have to throw across ledges or in open spaces. That's just how it works in CS2D. It does again take some adjustment, but you will get used to it over time. Also, you can't really do long distance shots unless you count off-screen deaths. With it on, you can actually get shot from enemies you can't even see on the map, which can lead to confusing and frustrating deaths. But if you turn it off, this ensures that gunfights will only work within the same occupied space. When it comes to the maps themselves, they're actually not too far apart from their 3D counterparts when it comes to the layouts themselves, but the visual fidelity isn't as detailed, of course. In saying that, there is an experimental 3D mode where you have 3D objects displayed on the map, and personally I think it makes the game look a lot better. You can also change the look of the models from classic to HD, and through modding you can add entirely new models and weapon skins and other things. One other fantastic aspect of this game is also the level editor that it comes packed with. I love it when games come with a level editor because not only does it ensure an infinite pool of content through the creativity of players, but it also ensures that you'll have unique experiences every time. CS2D's level editor is both easy and intuitive to use, and map making in 2D is much easier than it is in 3D. You have a blank grid, and on the left you have a bunch of objects consisting of walls, floors, boxes, entities, triggers, and spawn points. You can either make really basic or complex maps, and you can load them up very quickly and save it for later play sessions. You can also spawn weapons that you don't normally see in the traditional game modes, like the Tesla coil, a weapon that melts anything within reach. For those that aren't too interested in making their own maps, that's okay too, because you can also play other maps on the servers or download maps made by other people through websites that have these maps available. I'll put a link for custom maps in the description as well. When it comes to shooting itself, it works in one of two ways, having the recoil on or off. Having it on brings a more authentic CS experience, where spray control and controlling the rate of fire becomes more important. With it off, the gameplay is more streamlined and you just focus more on dumping all of your rounds whenever you see an enemy. Each server will adhere to different rules in place, but eventually you'll get used to them as you get familiar with the 2D space and the game's mechanics. As for the view space in the game, you can either see everything on the map or turn Fog of War on. Like in the other CS games, you're limited to your point of view so you can't see everything, but in CS2D, you have the option to see everything. For an intense and competitive session, I would recommend turning Fog of War on with everything hidden. This isolates your point of view in the game, and since you don't have all the information anymore, callouts and sounds take a more crucial round. The weapons themselves play true to how the 1.6 weapons worked. If you've already come from 1.6 or any other CS game, then you don't really have to take much time into adjusting with them. The only thing you'll have to adjust to, of course, is the gunplay itself and, shooting in a 2D plane. A lot of the times you'll be aiming in the direction of the enemies rather than directly on the enemies themselves. As for sniping or using scoped weapons, I actually really like how it's implemented here. When you aim with any of the scoped weapons, it limits your view to the scope, putting you in a vulnerable position where you can't see anything else but the scope. But on the same token, your damage is multiplied, incentivizing the use of the scope to get the drop on your enemies and do the most damage possible. When the game finally clicks with you, it can actually be really fun. The game shows that the simple but tactically in-depth gameplay of Counter-Strike can even work on a 2D plane, and this was done all the way back in 2004. You have a variety of game modes, including your usual bomb defusal and hostage rescue maps. For people that just want to frag, you have DM and TDM for those that want respawns. Then there's a bunch of other round-based modes like Capture the Flag, where you bring the enemy flag to your post to win the round. Then there's Domination, a mode where you either kill all the enemies or hold the objectives on the map. VIP is where the terrorists have a specific person to kill in order to win the round. On CT side, the VIP has to escape the map in order to win the round, or have CT kill the other team. In Fight Yard, you have a bunch of different weapons on the floor, and it's basically just a round-based DM. Zombies is similar to Zombie Panic or Infection from Halo, where you have survivors and then zombies. Each survivor that dies adds more to the zombie ranks, and then it becomes a case of attrition until you fall or the timer runs out. Then finally you have the construction mode, where you can build walls, set up barricades, barbed wires, supplies to give you weapons, and teleporters. It can be a fun mode with friends if you have any, just to muck around, but on your own it's pretty limited, and you may as well just play Factorio or Minecraft if you just want to build stuff on a gigantic plane. It's a game with a variety of content, and it's further expanded in both the servers and the modding community behind the game. In fact, you could even mod the game to play like Team Fortress 2 or Left 4 Dead. I'll put links for both mods in the description. At the end of the day, CS2D is a fantastic fan project that not only faithfully recreates CS 1.6 in a 2D plane, but also provides a unique experience that stands out on its own. Gameplay is fun and customizable, has great scripting potential thanks to Lua, has an easy intuitive level editor, lots of weapon variety that can be played on specific maps or any map, or added with mods. It's also incredibly easy to run and games are easy to find thanks to the quick play system, a system that is more common now thanks to modern matchmaking systems. The only potential caveat is that the player base in this game is pretty small compared to the rest. Even CS 1.6 and Source holds larger numbers in this game, so a lot of the times you may end up playing with bots, or if you're lucky, you may find a server with the latency not being too high and still having a decent chunk of players. Either way, you're going into the game with a low population in mind. Whether there'll ever be a sequel to this game or a modernized version with an updated engine, improved gameplay, mechanics and graphics remains to be seen. It would actually be pretty cool to see CS2D but with the polish and graphical fidelity of Counter-Strike 2. If anyone remembers the game Soldat, just look at the sequel game and see how much better it looks and plays. 2D multiplayer can be both polished and fun, and CS2D is a game that has stood the test of time 20 years later. CS is still CS, even in 2D, and I would highly recommend anyone to check it out and see what I think is an underrated and important part of CS history. Stay tuned, and thank you for watching.